Hi there, Linda Goodall here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to stitch on greeting cards, or paper in general. Now, a lot of people think you have to have a special design to stitch on a greeting card, and that's true to some extent, but if you can prepare your paper properly, then you can stitch anything on it. So everything, no matter what you stitch on, always goes back to the embroidery recipe. So let's take a look at that. So here's the embroidery recipe. And we have ingredients. We have fabric, well in this case we have paper, we have a design, we have thread, we have backing, we have topping, we might have adhesives, we do in this case. We have equipment, and that would be your machine, your needles, your hoop. And just like a recipe, we have a preparation time, and it's longer than you think. And so for instructions, we have making sure design is compatible with fabric, hoop using appropriate hooping techniques in desired fabric location with appropriate backings, toppings, and adhesives. Season with threads as desired. Set machine tensions carefully to avoid burning. Sew until done and properly maintain machine. Trim threads, remove from hoop promptly, discard backing, serve with pride and joy. So yes, we can adapt these to different types of things, and depending on what we're going to sew on, we'll be changing stabilizers, we'll be changing hooping methods, we might even change threads, we might change needles. So all of these things are adjustable, and you can learn more about that in my book, The Embroidery Recipe. And that's a downloadable book, it's an ebook, it's a PDF. You can print it out, I printed it out, you can see it's pretty big. It's got lots of charts, got lots of helpful information in it. But we're going to talk about greeting cards. Now this is a redwork style design. It was done just as a run stitch, and it works great on paper. In fact, this one was stitched with metallic thread on paper, and I've colored it with colored pencils. But what if you have just a regular design, or a design that's using the popular back stitch, because that's a little heavier? Well, then what do? Well, if you stitch that on paper, you're probably going to cut it out. So all you have to do is add fabric. So this one, I've added fabric, and then behind here, I've got some mylar, make it all sparkly. And you can get pretty fancy on this. For example, this card is really, really dense. It's a pretty dense design anyway, but it's back stitch. And those stitches are short. We have lots of curves. So the software has shortened those stitches to go around those curves and make them look smooth. And I also have a message on the inside. So these are all things you can do, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. We're actually going to make this card. So you'll see how to make this card. If you look at the back, I finished the back just by adding a piece of fabric, and that is stitched in the hoop. And I'll show you how to do that. So what kind of paper can you use? Well, you can just get cardstock. This is like some kind of postcard size, and they come in different colors. You can get them this way. So if you go to a scrapbooking store, you can find this kind of stuff. These came from probably Michael's or Hobby Lobby. You can also use watercolor paper. In fact, here's one I stitched on watercolor paper. And you can see that I'm in the process of coloring it. I'm not done yet. But this is just watercolor and paper that I've taped down. And I don't know if you can see the pencil lines, but I've used a pencil to mark where the paper goes in my hoop. So I'll show you different ways to figure that out. Now, these designs have all been modified in software. And it's a very easy thing to do, because what I've done is I've added lettering and I've added a simple border. And sometimes the border is a motif, like this one, got a little shamrock kind of motif. But other ones, like this one, just has a straight stitch around the edge. You can put your fabric on your paper and stitch this way, but there's another card I have here. This one was stitched on fabric first. So I put fusible fleece on the back, I stitched my design, and then I just stitched it to my card with a straight stitch on my sewing machine. So there it is. You don't even see anything on the inside. I know a lot of you like to do everything in the hoop, and that's what I'm going to show you here. So I'm going to switch to the overhead camera, show you some more samples, and after that, we'll get started on our greeting card. Now there is a separate video that shows you how to make these adjustments in software. And some of them are very basic, but I also show you some advanced things, and you can watch that one separately. So here we just have some postcard type greeting cards. And so they don't open at all. And if you look at the back, they don't look all that great. So what I've done on this one is that I put a back on it. And you can see the back right here. And the back can be a totally different fabric, and it can even be a greeting. So this one has a finished back on it, and it's just fabric. And I've stitched that in place with this motif. Now we're going to make this one after we get through this introductory part, but just look at these. Now this design is the same as this design, but what I've done is I've added lettering, and I've added a motif border, and I've put fabric down. Maybe I could have picked a little lighter fabric, but this is what I had. And you can see how different it looks from this one. This one just kind of looks kind of blah and unfinished. Now the advantage of adding the fabric is that you can put a much more stitch intensive design on your card because the cards just don't hold that much. So let's look at a few more. So here are a few more cards. This one is a Halloween card, and I finished it with some more Halloween-y type fabric on the back. And it's just a postcard style design, and I've added the lettering. This one is a Mother's Day card, and I've added a message on the inside of this one. And up here, what I should have done is stitch the front and then put the whole piece on the inside all the way across, and then I would have covered that up. This is the way we test designs. This one isn't even stitched on paper. This is some kind of special little card that has an insert so you can put any kind of design in there. Now here we have some hummingbird designs. These have been sewn with metallic thread. This is a soft light metallic thread. All three of these were done with that. And I don't know if you can see this kind of discoloration. I glued a piece of paper on the back, and that glue discolored. So you got to be careful what you put on the back. So the back is going to show no matter what you do. And you can cover it up with fabric, you can cover it up with another greeting card, but you're not going to be able to hide your stabilizer. It doesn't show that much on a white card. And here's another card that's been sewn sideways, and you can see that it looks like that on the inside. Now these designs are really, really dense. This is a backstitch design. We talk about that in the other video where we're showing how to make the design. And if you have that problem, you can put fabric down, or you can do what I did here, is actually stitch on fabric, and then I've just straight stitched this onto my greeting card. So if you look at the inside, I just have a straight stitch going around. And what I did here was I fused fusible fleece to the back of my fabric so that it has a little bit of dimension. So in the next part of this video, we are going to remake this card. So stay tuned. So let's see what we're going to need to make our card. So I have some cards here, and it's just the postcard kind. And I have a couple pieces of fabric cut. I have a piece of mylar here, and the mylar looks like this. It's just the opalescent kind. And I have some steam-a-seam too. Now I do have the light, and it's not what I normally use, but I ordered the wrong thing by mistake, but it works fine with cards. So we're just going to go ahead and use it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a piece of steam-a-seam, peel off some of the backing so that I can access the sticky part. I'm going to take a card and I'm going to stick it down. I'm just going to try to line it up on the edge there, like that. And then I'm going to use my rotary cutter and ruler, and I'm going to cut it out. And hopefully my head won't get in the way. I'm just using my thumbnail to make sure that it's lined up with the edge. And cut. And cut. So I'm just putting my thumbnail up against the edge of the card, and then rotary cut off like that. Set that aside for a moment. And now I'm going to peel off the paper. Believe me, I've tried all sorts of different ways to do this, and this seems to be the best way to do it. So I've got my sticky stuff on there. This is why I like steam-a-seam too. And I'm going to stick this down to my fabric. And I've cut my fabric a little bit bigger because it's real hard to exactly line up your fabric on that. And we'll use the rotary cutter again. So could you use scissors? Well, you could, but a rotary cutter is just so much nicer. I think I'm going to get my other mat out here so I don't scratch up my white one. So there's my card. Set that aside. And now what I like to do is press it. Make sure you have a little dry iron here. And this just makes sure that the steam is fully stuck down to the card. You don't have to press it very long. It just melts it right to there. So now, let's take a look at our design. So here's the worksheet for my design. And the first color is the placement line, which is this outline. And then I have this ivory colored motif going around. And that's going to attach my card. Then I have some kind of spiral stitching for the yellow. That's going to hold down my mylar. And then I have the flower. Now here's the thing. Back of your card is going to look nasty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this color. And then it'll be sewn right on my hoop stabilizer, which is cut away. And I've already done that. Then I'm going to stick my card down. And then I'm going to skip color number 2, because this would normally attach my card to my cutaway, but I'm going to hold that till last. So then I'll go to the yellow, which is the spiral, but before I do that, I need to place my mylar down. So I'll put my mylar down, something like that. And then I'll sew the yellow to stick the mylar down, then I'm going to tear off the mylar. Now I might have to cut it because it might not be perforated enough, and then I'll sew the purple. And then I'm going to stick another piece of fabric on the back. And that fabric will be attached by color number 2. So I have to go back to color number 2. So this is how you can skip around in a design if you don't have software. You can do it at your machine. I can tell you, this is a lot easier to do on a single needle machine than on a multi-needle. So let's finish preparing our fabric here. I need to cut some strips. And we'll cut this approximately in half. And I'll take my fabric card, and I'm going to put some strips on the back. I've already sewn my placement line on here. What I have to do is line up my card right inside those lines. Now I'm ready to take it to the machine and put my mylar down
and sew color number 3.
Okay, so I've already skipped to color number 2 on my machine. I'm going to put the mylar down, and it's kind of, staticky, so it might hold. But if you're worried about it, you can put a couple little pieces of tape on there. Put the presser foot down, got my color changed, and press go. So now we need to get rid of our excess mylar, and we'll see if it tears. I don't think it's going to tear. I might rip out my stitches. So I'm just going to use some scissors and trim around closely. So there we have that. Put it back in the machine, and we'll sew the next color. Okay. So now I'm going to take another piece of fabric and I'm going to stick it over the back. So to get it to stick, I'm going to use, once again, Steam a Seam 2. And we'll just put some strips down. And I'm just placing them right inside my placement line. Take my fabric, lay it over that. Now what I need to do is go back to color number 2 and sew that, and it will attach everything together. There she is, all done. So I have one more step to do, and that is to trim it one more time. Take it out of the hoop, get my rotary cutter. And actually what I like to do is get rid of the basting stitches. And that's easier to do behind the scenes. I'm just using a seam ripper to go through the bobbin stitch about every 4 or 5 stitches, and then we can pull it out from the front. That way we can make sure that none of that placement stitch shows. So get your rotary cutter, and we're going to trim it off. Getting my pressing mat over here. Give it a good press. This will stick everything together. So there we go. Look how pretty that is. And they're easy to make. They're not very expensive because you just have a little bit of cardstock, a little bit of fabric, and a little bit of mylar, and not very much thread either. And they're quick to make. So whip some up today.